Good afternoon to everyone and welcome to today's webinar. If this is your first time on one of our webinars, we are so pleased to have you. And if you've joined us before, you know that these conversations are intended to share tips, tools, and strategies for creating trauma-informed environments. My name is Kim Sanders, and I am the president of Ukeru Systems. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items so you know how to best participate in today's event. We've taken a screenshot of an example of the Attendee Interface. You should see something that looks like this on your computer desktop in the upper right-hand corner. You're listening in using your computer speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and dial-in information will be displayed. We are eager for this to be as interactive as possible. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing them into the questions pane of the control panel. You can send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session before we end today's presentation. In addition, we welcome you to join us throughout this conversation on social media by using #StartsWithYou. A few other items we wanted to make you aware of. This presentation will be distributed in the next few days to everyone who has signed up. We are also recording this conversation and will post that on our website later this week. I am excited to introduce you to Chris Ferry. He's Executive Director of Community Programs at KidsPeace, a private charity serving the behavioral and mental health needs of children, families, and communities. KidsPeace provides a psychiatric hospital, a comprehensive range of residential treatment programs, accredited educational services, and a variety of foster care and community-based treatment programs. In his role, Chris oversees 4 outpatient, 3 partial hospitalization programs, and 4 autism-specific programs, which together provide services to more than 5,000 individuals each year. He has been with KidsPeace since 1998. Having been there for so many years, Chris has seen the organization go through different changes and challenges. Chris and I first met at a conference a few years back. We started talking about our similar organizational missions, and our dialogue really just hasn't stopped since then. The Ukeru team has had the pleasure of working with Chris and KidsPeace since 2019. I couldn't be happier to have Chris share some of the details behind that experience today. So welcome, Chris. It's so great to have you here.
Thanks, Kim. I'm happy to be here as well. Happy to share this story. Ukeru has really been a game changer for us. So however I can spread the story and the knowledge and this wonderful technique, and happy to be here.
Well, that we really appreciate the kind words, Chris. And again, it's your experience through this has been very inspiring for us. You know, it's one thing that the changes that we made at Grafton, but my goodness, when we can go and help someone else and then see the extraordinary results that you guys have had, then we're with you. We want to share it too. So if you don't mind, can you talk to us a little bit how you have created this culture of safety?
Sure. So the first slide is about the buy-in. And for us, really, obviously, change is difficult for everyone. And, for any kind of buy-in, we need champions. And why it was so successful with us, I feel, is because I was championing it as the executive director, and then I had management underneath me, and then more importantly, line staff who are in the milieu every day, really championing this. And to help with change and to get that buy-in, what I did is just really had frank discussions and frank questions. And, I was going to staff and saying, listen, every time that we go hands-on, every time that we physically restrain a client, what could happen? And the answers are simple. Well, we could injure the client, we could injure ourselves, we could get investigated, or all 3. And so really it was, well, if we can implement a tool and give you something else to decrease these, to help mitigate risk, would you be on board? And the majority of people were, yeah, I mean, if you're going to give me something that's going to be helpful, keep me from getting hurt, hurting someone else, or going through an investigation, I'm all on board. You know, some of the tenured staff, it was hard, I think, because, you know, they've been kind of in a system and, you know, utilizing what they know for so many years, you know, and they were used to physical restraint and going through different changes in our state, Pennsylvania. We had a lot of changes in physical restraint. At one point, we were able to do prone restraints and supine, and then that was taken away. And, you know, they just felt that we were getting away from more and more of the tools. And so to give them an extra tool that could do all of this, the buy-in started to happen. So the next slide, we'll talk about the positive effects on the staff and clients. The biggest one here, obviously, is better relationships. So with this system, it really decreases the power struggles that a lot of my line staff are going through on a daily basis. And every time we were going hands-on with a child or an individual, you know, there was a chance for trauma for the staff, trauma for the child. It was inherent early that the majority of staff don't want to go hands-on. But again, what else can we do? So the Ukeru system allowed us to have another tool in place prior to restraint. So relationships were better, client-staff interactions were better, staff-to-staff interactions were better. People felt happier, safer. Turnover started to decrease. What we all know if we work in the mental health system, that there's not a lot of folks who last, especially if you're working in the line. If you're working on the line in your daily, you know, and you're dealing with being hit on, spit, kicked, and you're going through all of these things, you're lasting 2 years, 3 years, unless you're going on into management. So we started to see turnover decrease, obviously injuries decrease for both staff and clients. And then, like I said, that staff morale, client morale just went straight up. And as a result, the program, staff, and clients just started to feel safer. And the biggest thing for me, I think, is, you know, 21 years, and I worked as a line staff. And I remember years and years ago, you know, it wasn't uncommon to have 50 restraints in a month. And you could feel the tension in the building. You could walk around and you could just feel it. Now, it's completely different. It's just the whole climate has changed. And again, that's with the tools and the additional tools that we now have in place. So the next slide, we'll talk about some strategies and approaches. So for us, you know, after we got the buy-in from the staff, and we started to get training in it, it was, okay, how are we going to roll this out to our clientele population? And what we did is we created a FAQ fact sheet that we give out now at intake, and it talks about Ukeru. It talks about, first off, what does Ukeru even translate to? Then, you know, why is it being used? What's it look like? What do the pads look like? So forth and so on. For younger kids, we have a coloring page for them as well that they can kind of fill in, but it was really geared towards parents and then obviously clients who could, you know, really start to understand that, you know, this is what we want to do. And we want to do this because we don't want to put our hands on you. We don't want to get to a point where we have to physically restrain or physically intervene. So getting that up and out, and one of the first things we talk about intake has been very big. The two other main strategies are making the mats visible and accessible throughout the building. We'll talk about data in a little bit, and when I see data changes at any of my programs, I usually find out because the mats are like not visible. They're being put somewhere, or they're not being out, and then the major thing is encouraging the use of mats. So that was a hard buy-in for staff too. So, you know, staff would say, okay, so this kiddo is going to come down and he's angry, or he's this and that, and we're supposed to let him just play with the mats. And the answer is yes, let him play with the mats. And the follow-up for me would be, well, do you want to engage in a power struggle that could lead to a restraint, that could lead to an injury or an investigation? Or do you just want to let them play with the mats? Well, it's simple. Encourage. Let them play with the mats. Let them find that and use it to cope and get through the current situation that they're going through. So, those strategies are key. Just make the mats accessible, visible, and make sure that, all staff are on the same page. We're not pulling mats from kids if they're grabbing them. We're not pulling mats from kids if they're using them to build a little hut in our timeout. So the next slide, we'll talk about some results. So like I said, we implemented the Ukeru system in the 2 partial hospitalization programs in 2018. These programs provide treatment, these 2 partial programs provide treatment to about 100 kids on a daily basis. And these programs are partial hospitalization programs. So the kids coming in are ages 5 to 18. They have, pretty severe behavioral issues. They're being referred, from the school districts, or a lot are being referred from residentials, hospital inpatient programs. And prior to implementation, we were on average having about 42 physical restraints per month. And out of those 42 physical restraints per month, about 20 clients were restrained multiple times per month. And we deem that as someone being restrained multiple times per month is somebody who's obviously restrained 1 or more times in a day, or 1 or more times over a 3-day period. So it could be 3 restraints in 3 days or 3 restraints in 1 day. So those were clients that were high magnitude, high acuity. We were tracking them. And then we were always tracking the time spent in our crisis room. So I was fortunate to have some crisis staff at the one program. We were keeping minutes, and on average, about 15 minutes were spent in timeout. And when you look at the use of restraint, even back then, 10 years prior to that, I'd say in 2008, it was easily over 50 restraints per month, because in PA, we were allowed to physically intervene if the client was a danger to self, danger to others, or a high magnitude of disruption, which, looking back now was pretty bonkers that you could physically restrain for someone just continuing to act up in a high magnitude of disruption. So that was removed. So we still had the danger to self, danger to others, but a lot of times restraints were happening because there was no other tool involved to help with the de-escalation or help with the coping. And you found yourself in a situation where you felt threatened, or you felt like the child was in danger, and we were going hands-on. So that was in 2018. Early February, April, we started the rollout. And then the next slide will show you some of the results from the end of 2018 and 2019. So, these are insane to me. They really are. So by the end of 2018, we were down to 18.93 physical restraints per month, which is, over a 50% decrease in just 1 year. Not even 1 year. We went from 20 clients being restrained multiple times per month down to 3.8, which is, again, a huge number, because you think about clients being physically restrained multiple times. Anytime you're physically restraining someone multiple times in a day, the chances of injury go way up. So, here's a client who was restrained in the morning, now we're restraining him in the afternoon, we're restraining him at night, staff are getting hurt, clients are getting hurt, investigations are happening. So for that number to drop from 20 to 3.8 just blows my mind. And then the other big one is we were averaging about 50 minutes in timeout, and that dropped to 26.5. So what does that tell me? It tells me that kiddos are coming in, they're angry, they're de-escalating faster, they're able to turn around, get back into class, get back into therapy. Crisis staff aren't getting burned out. You're not seeing the same repeat flyers just coming in over and over again, taking up your whole morning because they can't return to classroom. So again, tremendous. And then you look at that at the end of 2019. So we just finished 2019 data, and numbers are even better. So now we're at 8.42 physical restraints per month. And again, census has stayed the same. The amount of clients that we see at these programs is the same. It's not like it's dropped. The only thing that I would say has changed is probably the acuity of the clients has gone up. And there's a number of factors because of that. In our state, we got rid of detention centers. There's a big push on kids who are adjudicated delinquents getting into treatment. So we started to see higher and higher acuity. Also residentials. Some residentials have closed. Hospital stays are lower. So if anything, the only change has been that the acuity of some of the kids that we're seeing has in fact increased. And even with that, these results have gone down. So you have 8.42 physical restraints per month, 1.3 now at the multiple restrained clients. And this time spent in timeout is even going down to 24. So the next slide, we'll put it all into the big picture. So if you look in a 2-year period, these programs have reduced restraints by nearly 80%. Reduced the number of clients restrained multiple times by nearly 94%. And reduced the average time spent in timeout by 52%. Now that's just tracking restraints. What I haven't tracked and been unable to track really is how much time have I saved my staff? How much time have I saved staff of dealing with crises on a daily basis? Kim knows all too well. Folks on the phone probably know all too well. You get a kiddo in crisis, you can be in crisis with that child for 2 hours, 3 hours till it resolves. I'm showing this data that restraints are down, time spent in timeouts down, things are getting better. So, how much time have I saved? How much time have I given back to staff to do traditional good therapy with clients, to interact positively with clients? We tell our line staff all the time, at least I do, never underestimate the impact you can have on someone, even with the most simple, task. You can change someone's life. And these kids will remember some of these staff for a long time. They'll remember something that they said, that they did. More importantly, they'll remember how they made them feel. And if I'm giving time back to the staff to have genuine, empathetic, unconditional positive regard, therapeutic interactions with the kids they're serving, I can't put a number or price on that, but that could be the biggest takeaway here. So the next slide is the keys to success. So, we're on year 3 now, and with anything, you got to keep it going. So we were having year 1 weekly meetings, end of year 1 bi-weekly, last year 2019 bi-weekly, monthly meetings, and now I continue to have monthly meetings with key folks. So I still have phone calls, interactions. Obviously, I'm at the programs a lot too, so I'm walking around, seeing it, interacting with staff, asking them how it's going. And then the monthly ones, I'm meeting with program managers and some select champions and just saying, hey, what are some lessons learned? What are some tasks and some things that maybe have come up, or areas we need to troubleshoot? And obviously, you're going to have turnover, regardless of staff feeling safer. People in the mental health world, we're not rich. We're not driving around Ferraris, or unless maybe you're a psychiatrist, but that's a whole other thing. So we're constantly having staff turnover. People are getting better jobs, they're getting in and out. So when you have a staff turnover, we got to find new champions. We got to get people on board. But as long as that culture is still in place, it's an easier transition. The other big key to success is that data that I've just shared with you on the last 2 slides, I share with everyone. So I'm sharing meaningful data. I also collect data on the amount of time, or the amount of times that Ukeru is being used per month. So at the one campus, it's being used about 40 times a month. And then I also ask and I track, is it staff initiated or is it non-staff initiated? So I want to know if Ukeru mat is being used, is it because a staff had it to protect themselves or had it because a client was becoming aggressive, or was it being used because a client was walking in, was feeling a certain way, kicked the mat, hit the mat, did whatever to the mat, just to try to get themselves back together. So that's meaningful data for me, and I can track that, and I can show program staff, and it also helps me troubleshoot. So if restraints are up in one program, I look and maybe the use of Ukeru is down, and maybe I'll call up there and I'll say, hey, what's been going on last month? And it could be something like, well, it was just one really acute client who we were restraining a lot, and he had multiple restraints, and we had to end up unfortunately hospitalizing him again. Or it's, we got new staff in and they're just not on board with the system. We've got to train them a little bit more, and then I just prompt them, prompt the management, make sure you're out there, make sure the pads are visible, they're accessible, make sure that all the kiddos in the program know why they're there, run a group on it, have open discussions about it. And then another key to our success is that we added other kind of trauma-focused and sensory tools. And that's a real big key too, because we wanted to add things to this to try to support and help. And I already talked about the regular basis, and that'll be ongoing. My Ukeru monthly meetings, they don't have an end date on my calendar. They're just going to continue to go on until I'm retired and I leave and I hand it over to someone else. So the keys: don't stop training, don't stop talking about it, meeting about it. The frequency goes down as the comfort level goes up, but share that meaningful data and then look at other tools that you can use. And the next slide, we'll talk about some of those tools. Look at that, great segue. So the classroom toolbox you see there is something that we have now in every classroom. So at the Berks campus, there are 15 classrooms. At my Bethlehem campus, there's 3. Every classroom will have this coping skills crate or coping skills box. And in it, you can see there are tons of different tools, slinkies, fidget spinners, squishy items, you name it. So it's really taking that comfort versus control to the next level. So this is an opportunity. The kids in the class, they're getting upset. Now the mats, the mats are in the hallways. Some mats are in the class too, depending on what's going on. Mats are down in the crisis, but these boxes are in every classroom. So a kid could get up and go over. They're getting frustrated with math. They're getting frustrated with a peer. They could use one of these tools and help them calm down, help them de-escalate. And I think one of the common questions is, well, so you're just going to let them get up and walk around? Well, that's a teachable moment too. So the first time, yeah. The second time it could be, hey Kim, listen, I'm so happy that you went to the toolbox, you used this. Next time, how about you raise your hand and ask? So you're introducing kind of new tools for them. Also, because ultimately these kiddos are going to go back to their home school. They're not going to have Ukeru pads. They're not going to have access probably to a coping skills crate. So it's about us finding moments then to teach and to provide skills that are going to transition into their homeschool. So it's not just about letting them do what they want to do. You're always finding the teachable moment. But again, these coping skills crates are there. They're easily accessible. Kids are using them. Sometimes that keeps them from taking a walk to time out or walking out of the class. Then the next slide is talk about our comfort room. So we were fortunate at both campuses to identify some space. And we wanted to identify some space where it was just an area to go, a therapeutic tool to prevent kiddos from escalating to a crisis situation. So we have the crates, we have the pads, and now we have what's called a comfort room. It's a place to strengthen and build therapeutic relationships with staff. And basically what we're doing, and you can go to the next slide because there's a picture of it. so we have this space created, and all the kiddos are taught, like, you know, how do we get into the comfort room, you know, and it's so you're dealing with something, you know, you come in, a lot going on at home, you can't focus, you don't want to do anything. So, you know, what would we do in the past? This kid would put their head down, and we'd be trying to wake them up all day. Nothing would happen, and then eventually, what would happen? That could escalate, and then they're up and they're flipping a desk, and then they're in timeout, and boom, now they're restrained. So, you know, now they're coming in, they're saying, listen, I had a really bad day, you know, a lot going on at home. Can I go to the comfort room? A staff will take them to the comfort room. You can see there's big beanbag chairs and mats and whiteboards and all kinds of stuff. And they'll talk. And, you know, the cool thing that I've seen is that after the kiddos go home, a lot of times staff are in there. And I can tell you, I've been in that beanbag chair, and it's very comfy. So, you know, we're trying to help everyone here. I mean, I remember working the line, and at the end of the day, feeling so exhausted, and, you know, just like lying on the floor or sitting in my desk, like, ugh. And now here's an opportunity for staff to utilize this as well. And all in that comfort room, you know, was $500. I think we put all into it. If you go to the next slide, you'll see a picture. You can turn off the lights. So we put some optic lights in there. We got some great calming nature sounds. So, you know, that's the picture if the lights are off. We also have, next slide is different things we have in there, like a mini sandbox, putty, glitter bottles, rice, so you name it. So it's really just a great room that can be utilized kind of prior to reaching to a point of you know, escalation and timeout and crisis and restraint or not restraint or Ukeru use. And it's been great. And we were able to do 2 of these rooms at each program. And that's something we talk about too. We share ideas. So that monthly meeting that I'm having with my program leadership and some of the line staff, how are the rooms? Are they being utilized? You know, the staff and clients, are they aware of them? What are some things that are really the kids are going after in there, you know, that they're really drawn to? And if it's this and we don't have it at the other program, okay, well, let's put it at the other program. So again, just another kind of one step more to really trying to get the comfort first control. And next. So real simple slide, but again, so powerful. I mean, what has this done? This is just drastically, you name it, decreased our restraints. And with that, it's decreased staff injuries. The use of Ukeru is sky high, and staff are happy. You know, and I said previously, you know, as a line staff, and again, I was fortunate to work my way up through KidsPeace. You know, I've been there, so I can relate to people. I know what it's like to be spit on. I know what it's like to be punched, kicked, bit. I've had it all happen to me. I've been sworn at in numerous languages. I've heard everything about my mom. I've heard it all. And, you know, just this tool has just changed everything. You know, and I've joked with Kim before, and this is probably the best compliment I can give, and it doesn't sound that way, but such a simple thing, you know, such a simple technique that was introduced by Kim and the folks at Grafton, and you know, you never thought of it. We didn't have anything like this, you know. It was a client's coming at you, you had to restrain them. There was nothing to put in. There was nothing to put in between you, to help with the escalation, to help with your safety. And, you know, just looking back, it's like, wow, this is so simple yet so profound, and it has absolutely changed the climate of the programs that I work in. You know, and like Kim said, we're part of KidsPeace. It's now implemented in all of our programs. So we are a national company. We have a 120-bed inpatient hospital. It's being utilized there. It's being utilized in our residentials, which are in Pennsylvania, Georgia. It was just rolled out to our residential which is up in Maine. And a lot of these folks are calling me and saying, same thing, like, hey, what was the buy-in? How did it make it happen? And it's not overnight, but get the right champion, stay with it, and this is something that will guaranteed change everything. Next slide. So again, that comfort versus control is still the motto. And the big thing I like to point out, it's not giving the kids what they want. It's helping fulfill the needs. That is massive because again, early on, you're going to get staff to say, so we're just going to let them do this. We're just going to let them, And again, yes, because we're going to avoid a certain situation, but then you're also going to have an opportunity to talk to them. And you can't, once everyone knows, once you have an individual in crisis, once they've, hit that all or nothing, that fight or flight, now it's drain off. Now you got to drain them off because whatever you say, you don't have a magical word that's going to get them to calm down. They're in crisis, they're going to be in crisis. 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, who knows? So the key is not getting to that point. And this tool is a way, giving them an option, use the maps. Let's talk about it. I mean, another thing that I think about all the time, and, even, kids would come in the morning, they'd be late and they miss lunch. They miss breakfast. So they miss breakfast, they come in, they go to timeout, they say, hey, I'm late, I'm returning in, I missed breakfast. And our response would be, okay, you missed breakfast, go to class. Now our response is, okay, let me find you something. So we'll go down to the CAP, we'll get them a banana, we'll get them some cereal. Everything was real rigid in the past. You do this, I do this. And now there's more options. There's more options for the kids. There's more options for the staff. And I can't be happier. The mental health system has and will continue to change, and we must accept and adapt with the change. And I think, that's my favorite thing to talk about with Ukeru. Again, I look back at restraints, and restraints changed. When we lost prone and supine 10 years ago, and I remember everyone saying, "Oh my God, now what? Now what's going to happen? This is going to be terrible." Well, it wasn't. Restraints didn't go up. I mean, we've at KidsPeace alone in my 21 years, I've been through 4 different restraint techniques: PCM, PCI, SB. I mean, all these acronyms. You learn all of these, and then they change, they adapt, and more importantly, the acuity, like I said, especially in my programs, has changed, and it's going up. So if I'm able to offer a certain way to help decrease the amount of restraints, help increase the satisfaction of work, help increase the experience that kiddos are having at my programs, help decrease injuries across the board, I'm all for it. So I kick that to the questions. Questions are next. I know maybe I ran a little short, but I want you to definitely throw as many questions as you can at me, and I'll leave
Absolutely.
it to Tim. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, Chris, thank you so much. It's so crazy to think about sitting here talking to you and having you do this webinar, and it's been such a short time since we first met. I will always remember that day. You came up to me like so excited, and
I was.
But you're still excited. It's crazy. Like, you're still excited, and so
I am,
so
because I've seen it work. I mean, that's the crazy part. I've seen what this can do, and I'm just happy to share it.
Yeah, and we appreciate that so much. And for folks listening, we have a sort of a short case study about the success that Chris has seen at his programs at KidsPeace. You can check that out on our website. The other thing is, about a month ago, we had one of Chris's colleagues, Jody Whitcomb, on talking about how KidsPeace has, in their training and staff development department, has really tried to look at creating a trauma-informed culture for their employees. So if you missed that last month, please jump on the website, go to Stay Connected, go to webinars, and you can watch that that webinar in our archive folder. Again, it's very powerful. But Chris, just as as Chris mentioned, we want to take some questions. It looks like we have maybe one so far, but so please type those questions that you might have into the question panel there on your computer. Chris, one of the first questions someone has is, like, do we think that this methodology could be used for the juvenile justice system? And I want to hear your thoughts, but I want folks to know that right now, Ukeru is currently being used across North America, again, in private schools, public schools, places like Grafton and KidsPeace, more behavioral health care facilities. But we also are used in adult facilities, and we are used actually in a couple adult facilities that have forensic units. So while that's not technically juvenile justice, they have seen amazing results with adults. And for lack of better terms, it's a much more highly secure environment in those forensic units. So Chris, what do you think? I mean, I think this could definitely be used in juvenile justice places.
Yeah, 100%. And, it's interesting because I was fortunate, my career when I first got my master's degree in clinical, I was moonlighting. I was working a part-time job. I worked 7 years as a therapist part-time at a max secure detention center in Berks County. So I would do evals and do therapy with kiddos, adjudicated delinquents. And I remember those days very well. I mean, 7 years is a long time to work a part-time job. And I can tell you, when there was a crisis, it was very similar. It was a code blue. Kids would get shackled. And I'd see it all the time. I mean, basically handcuffed, legs to arms, and you talk about trauma. I mean, I get it. There's a big need there to de-escalate quickly because riots can happen. There's a big need to kind of intervene fast. But looking back, would this have worked? Absolutely, because a lot of situations don't arise to that. And again, if I'm working on a unit in a max secure detention center and I'm told you have a pair of handcuffs and you have a means to restrain, if this happens, you do it. Well, I mean, sometimes it would start off, because I was there, I was seeing it. It would start off as just minor, like, oppositional defiant behavior, talking back, not following rules, and then it starts to escalate. Or on the other hand, it would be a kid getting really, escalated about a certain situation. So again, if staff are there, I only have one way to intervene. So if you give people tools, you give anyone another tool, they're going to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. So let me look here at the other questions. So folks are asking, how did you identify your champions? Because Chris, both of us know that in this whole implementation and process we've gone through together, the champions have played a really, really important role. I know you mentioned that in your presentation, and I'd love for you to talk about how you picked who are going to be your champions.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted people different tenure. So I wanted new folks. I wanted folks who were there 10 years, 5 years, whatever. And then I needed to have and make sure I had representation at all levels. So the line staff are the key. I mean, I'm an executive director right now. I'm pretty high up. I'm the highest in my department. But I remember, again, being a line staff, and the worst thing was you get something, you get a memo, you get an email from someone that you hardly ever know or meet, and they're saying, guess what, we're going to do this, and it's like, no, I'm probably not going to. So, who's going to be the biggest champion? It's going to be those line staff, and as long as I got them and got them on board, and they were going around daily, walking around on the milieu, say, hey, let's use this, let's do this. That's where the biggest bang for the buck came. But like I said before, turnover happens, so I got to identify new people. But yeah, I wanted a mix of people who were in the job for 3 months to 3 years, people with a high school diploma up until a PhD. It didn't matter, but I wanted a good mix. And early on, I mean, our meetings, like I said, were weekly, then bi-weekly. It was about 15 people that I was meeting with. Which is tough. You're busy, you got things going on, but now I want you to get on a phone call with me once a week, and then that moved to, monthly. And a lot of those people are still intact. Some have left, but yeah, it's got to be up, down, all around.
Yeah, and I know that you won't give yourself this credit, so I'm going to give you the credit, because again, what we've also found in working with the agencies and schools and various places across the country is the other kind of champion that's pretty much a must is a leader that's actually passionate about this, who believes in it. And I think it only helps you, Chris, that you were direct care yourself. So I think immediately that gives you a little bit more street cred with people.
It does, yeah.
It does, and it was very obvious in walking through your buildings and meeting your people with you that you inspire them. So, it may be silly to say, but I feel like you could ask them to walk through fire, and if they know you're going to be beside them, they're going to do it for you. And that was my very first impression of your programs. And again, that's what we see. That makes a big difference. That if people feel like they have somebody in a leadership role that's in it with them, they will be open to doing something that's totally different and a very big change. And so you've definitely done that.
Oh, thank you. It's for me, it's the old saying, you don't take care of the consumer, you take care of your employee first. If you do that, they take care of the consumer. I mean,
Absolutely.
That's just the way I am. I've always been, stay with, it's a hard job. Mental health's a hard job. Everyone, knows that who's worked a day or 10 years. And then again, you're working on the line, man, you see it all, you hear it all, it gets done to you. And if I can relate to you somehow, and I can try to advocate for you to have a better job, to be happier to come to work, be safer to come to work, I'm all about it, and it really has been something that I'm passionate about. So thank you.
Absolutely. So someone would like you to just talk a little bit more about the ages of the kids in your program, and do you have a CPS or adjudicated population?
We have a mix of everything. So we take them as young as 5, and then 18, even up to 21 if they have an IEP. And then there's a couple different levels of care in these programs. So most are age-based, room-based. We'll have, a 10th, 11th, 12th grade classroom that has like 12 kids in it. So the classroom size is 12. We'll have 2 staff in each classroom. Depending on the level of care, one might be a certified special ed teacher, and then the other person is what we call a mental health worker. That's the line staff. And then the acute partial is, kiddos coming out of the hospital, going into the hospital. That's just mental health staff, no teacher in there because we don't provide education. And those different levels of care then kind of translate to how much time they're being seen by the doctor, how much time they're getting individual sessions, family sessions. But yeah, we have a lot of kids who come in or are on probation. We work hand in hand with the probation officer. Obviously, we have a lot of kiddos who've been involved with or actively involved with children and youth. That's very common too. Not to go on a tangent, but our majority of our population are coming in with trauma. That's it. If I had to put a number, I'd say 80%. Some form of trauma, either the environment they lived in, the family, what's going on, what happened in their school to get them to us, their interactions with adults. So again, that's why a system like Ukeru can help reduce that means of trauma. And I think, again, that's why it's so successful with building relationships between the kids and the staff.
Mm-hmm. So that same person would like you to just talk a little bit more about how this really impacted your adjudicated youth, like 15 to 18 years old. What was your experience there?
Well, I think, when we look at who's using the mats staff or non-staff involved. The younger clients are typically the ones non-involved. So we have a lot of younger clients, they're more hyper, they're more this or that. They're coming in and they're grabbing the mats. They build forts. They throw them up against the wall. They do all kinds of stuff. When older adjudicated youth in our program, when they're using Ukeru, it's typically because they're ready to punch something. And, again, it's punch this. Don't punch the wall. Don't punch me. Don't punch the window. I remember, again, years and years ago, I had a kid, he cut a major artery in his arm. He was mad. He's walking down the hall. He's clenched. His fists were clenched. I mean, it's like he's going to go. And I'm thinking, is he going to hit me? Luckily, he turned. Unfortunately for him, punched the window, pulled his arm out, cut a major artery. He was fine. I mean, it was horrible. But we've had broken windows. We've had broken hands. We've had staff with, serious injuries, lacerations. That is all going down because, again, we're introducing this adjudicated youth early on to the process. And it's just like the buy-in, with these kids. These kids, you got to have frank discussion. I mean, you can't come at it as a therapeutic talk over their heads. You got to just break it down. And I would say a 16-year-old kid coming from the inner city, we deal with a lot of kids from Reading, which is a high gang population, very high poverty rate. They come in and I'm going to say, listen, man, I don't want to put my hands on you. Like, you're going to get pissed. I understand it. I don't expect you to not get mad here. I don't expect you to not have a moment here where you're going to punch or do something. But here's the deal, man. I don't want to put my hands on you. I don't want you to hurt me. I don't want you to hurt yourself. And you see these mats? This is what we're going to do. So you get pissed off, you're going to see the mat. Punch the mat. You get pissed off, you're walking down the hall, don't punch the wall. Punch the mat. Kick the mat. Spit on the mat. Swear at the mat. I don't care. And again, a lot of people are like, oh, well, how's that helping them? Because they're going to go back to school. There's not going to be a mat. Because after that, I'm talking to them. And then I'm doing my therapy because they're calm. Right. And I can say, listen, understand, you're not going to have these resources. So let's talk. Let's talk about when you started to get mad. You started to feel it. What were your somatic, features that were telling you? What could you have done? So, again, it's just avoiding that crisis. Everyone has been in a crisis with a kid. And when that crisis peaks and they're full-blown screaming and full-blown tantrums, there's nothing you can do. It's just like you sit there and you just kind of wait it out, or restrain, or do this. So, it's getting them de-escalated quicker, safer, and then you're having that moment that you can talk.
Yeah, the other thing that we have found is, like, if you think about this, in the days when we used to use like all these restraints and, a kid would come up and maybe a kid would come up to you and just sort of face to face, like, cuss you out. And then you might give them some kind of warning. And a warning is sort of like drawing the line. And then the next thing you know, the kid punches you or tries to punch you and you restrain them. When that act happens, that is almost like, even though, please, I wouldn't want anyone to think that this is ever intentional, but it becomes what, to that kid, it feels like a fight. And then other kids that are watching, then it looks like a fight. So you have to also think about that, the other kids that see that happen. And then for that kid, because their peers are watching, they don't want to give in to that. They don't want to look like a chump that, let the staff get over on them, or however they view that. And so you get this big power struggle that's happening. For me, one of the biggest differences is with the Ukeru approach, because I have something to keep myself safe. And in a sense, I'm armed with this education around trauma-informed care and a philosophy of comfort versus control. When that's happening, and if that punch gets thrown and I can block it, because I feel safe and I'm keeping my own amygdala cool, I can remain calm, understanding, kind, nurturing, loving. And what that actually says to the kid that's being aggressive is, number one, this person is not like fighting me, they're actually helping me. And it also sends that same message to the kids watching. And what we have found, especially with this age group, 15 to 18, 19, more streetwise kids, is actually they look silly to their peers when you're trying to go after someone who's being so kind to you. And so we have actually seen in some programs where then those peers are like, oh, come on, Bob, leave him alone. Like, she's only trying to help you, or, so you get almost like this positive peer pressure that says, like, get control of yourself. Like, don't do that to someone who's being kind to you. And then, like you said, after it's over, you haven't damaged that relationship. So it's so much easier, and you can actually do it so much quicker to actually re-engage and say, like, it's okay. I know that you're really upset. Like, let's just sit down and we'll talk this through. Where it's really hard to do that after you have put your hands on someone and basically held them while they fought against you. It creates a whole different dynamic.
Yeah, it's not easily forgotten. I mean, it really isn't, by the client or the staff. I've seen emotional breakdowns from staff, because it's traumatizing. It's traumatizing, and it can last a while, and people get hurt, and you sit back and you think about it, and now what? You're going to see that individual the next day, and they're not going to forget it. You're not going to forget it.
Right. So you have that emotional impact on everyone involved, and then the reality is, there's plenty of studies. People are hurt. They are physically hurt more with the use of those types of, physical strategies.
Yeah.
So, that makes it hard. It makes it hard to come to work when you're hurt.
And we have, like, every organization, monthly meetings. I have a monthly, workman's comp meeting, and currently I have one staff out for a finger that was stubbed, and it was non-restraint related. That's it. Years ago, I had staff, broken hands, broken nose, torn knees, ACL injuries, all kinds of stuff. Because, again, if you've been in restraint, some of the toughest restraints I was ever in was a, 65-pound kid. Like, they have, like, this unbelievable strength and flexibility, and you're like, oh my God, God forbid, they're twisting and turning, and people get hurt. So,
right. Right. Well, this has been amazing, Chris. And again, I can't thank you enough for what you are doing for those kids at KidsPeace. You're having such an impact, and together, I think the more that we spread this and let people know that there is another option, then we can just impact more and more. So thank you. And I do want to be sensitive to everyone's time. Again, please know, everyone who signed up, we are going to send you an email that'll have the link to this webinar. If you're interested, you'd like to talk to any of us anymore, please just respond to that and let us know what we can do to help you. We would be happy to do that. And don't forget, you can always follow us on that hashtag starts with you on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Ukeru Systems even has a Pinterest page that you might find useful. And again, for all of us at Team Ukeru, as well as Chris and the good people at KidsPeace, we greatly appreciate you tuning in with us today, and thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.